Hello everyone and welcome to another Cut Rate Commander Precon Upgrade Guide, the series in which we give Precon decks a glow up without breaking the bank. My name's Grazzet, and today we'll be giving the Bloomburrow Squirreled Away Precon $35 worth of upgrades to bring it up to Cut Rate standards. As usual though, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you like this content. Consider supporting the channel directly either via my Buy Me a Coffee or my Game Nerds affiliate links in the description if you really like it, and be sure to stick around to the end to see which commander we'll be covering next and what commanders you'll be voting for an upcoming episode. Also, if you'd like to see my blind reaction and thoughts to the base Precon before any upgrades, you can do so by checking out my first impressions of it also in the description. So, with that out of the way, let's start by taking a look at the commander and playstyle. This deck's face commander is Hazel of the Rootbloom, a 3/5 squirrel druid that costs 2 and Golgari that has the following 2 abilities. Firstly, we can tap her, pay 2 life, and tap X untapped tokens we control to generate X mana in any combination of colors. And secondly, at the beginning of our end step, we create a copy of target token we control, or 2 copies of it instead if it's a squirrel. Breaking down her core stats, Hazel is sporting a mid-weight CMC, a slightly below average power but slightly above average toughness stat block for her cost, and a pair of abilities that not only create additional copies of our tokens, but also allows her to use our tokens to generate insane amounts of mana. Now, before we go any further, I'd just like to say that, in at least my opinion, Hazel is not really a Squirrel Tribal commander. And before all of you turn into an angry mob for me having said this, allow me to explain. You see, the only part of her entire kit that actually cares about squirrels is her second ability, and even then, unless we're jumping through some hoops, all that really nets us is an additional 1/1 body per rotation, which pales in comparison against the older Chatterfang, who can generate a lot more squirrels and then turn those squirrels into non-destruction removal, and even the alternate commander for this deck, the Odd Acorn Gang, which turns squirrels into repeatable draw and enables them to pump other squirrels, ultimately making her feel weak in comparison to her peers if we build her purely in a squirrel token generating direction. That, however, is the beauty of it, as we don't actually have to go all in on squirrel tokens in order to get the maximum usage out of this ability, as it's functionally just a repeatable populate that just happens to proc twice on squirrels, which is something that's not exactly common in our colors and certainly not in our command zone, enabling Hazel to take advantage of a much wider pool of tokens than her counterparts without losing out on too much, and allowing her to double up on much bigger, much more dangerous tokens as well. This then pairs nicely with Hazel's first ability, which lets us tap down any tokens to generate mana. Now, while it's true that this all has to be done in one shot since it's a tap effect on Hazel, and it forces us to shock ourselves in order to benefit from it, in a typical token deck this ability can easily generate us double digits worth of mana, with the added benefit of bypassing summoning sickness on creature tokens since tapping them down is part of the cost, and giving utility tokens like clues and food additional usage outside of cracking them, or in the case of treasure tokens, not having to crack them at all in order for them to generate mana in the first place, making it superb despite its limitations. So, as we can see based on her abilities, Hazel is a commander that primarily cares about tokens, allowing us to multiply them and turn them into ramp, who just happens to multiply squirrel tokens at a faster rate. Which is why in this upgrade we'll be going all in on tokens, adding in a wide variety of both front row and back row token generators to enable our commander, means to weaponize those tokens by either turning them into burn or empowering them so they can swing in harder, and even slotting in a handful of squirrel support pieces that synergize with our token creation so we don't completely ignore the squirrel aspect of Hazel's kit. And then, as a bit of extra spice, we'll also be adding in a handful of ways to make token copies of our non-token creatures, giving Hazel the ability to multiply any of the creatures in our build, which should perfectly position her to overwhelm our opponents with an unending tide of token bodies. So let us make our way back to Bloomburrow, this time to the outskirts of Three Tree City, where we'll find a thriving farming commune, and, within it, the reclusive cash master Hazel of the Rootbloom. Having been a humble cash worker on this same commune many years ago, she saw how unsustainable farming practices and the mistreatment of nature was affecting the world around them, and thus made it her mission to change this by any means necessary, using rousing speeches and displays of her druidic magic to sway many to her cause, and, if the rumors are to be believed, taking control of the commune itself once its previous leader died due to a mysterious illness that very much resembled nightshade poisoning. Now this commune is a thriving source of food and safety for its inhabitants that lives in harmony with nature, all under the watchful eye of Hazel. And while the rumors about her cold demeanor and burning anger when provoked are known far and wide across Bloomburrow, those in the commune itself are the only ones that know the truth about her, that she deeply cares for the commune and its people, going above and beyond to help them in any way her magics allow, not to secure her power or for even any recognition, but solely because beneath her stoic exterior is a squirrel that only wants the best for those around her. So, now that we know a bit more about the commander and her playstyle, let's jump straight into the upgrades. So, just to get it out of the way, the very first thing we'll be doing is augmenting the squirrel portion of this build, of which the core build admittedly has a decent number of powerful support pieces already included, so that Hazel can get a bit more value out of her token generation. As such, we'll be cutting Ogre Slumlord, who's a fine source of tokens as creatures die off, but is a bit mana intensive for a token generator that only procs conditionally in this build since we're not going full aristocrats, in favor of Camellia the Seed Miser, whose AoE menace granting and counter distribution for our squirrels is solid at enabling them to get in more reliably for bigger damage, while her ability to create more squirrels as we sack food synergizes nicely with both the food token generators in the base build and those that we'll be adding to build up our board at a faster rate, replacing Cash Grab, whose self-milled is largely wasted here since we have next to no graveyard synergies, with Valley Rotcaller, which can take advantage of the decently wide board of squirrel tokens we can create to deal considerable damage to our opponents while padding our own life totals, and removing Wolf Willow Haven, which just has too much stiff ramp competition to keep its spot, to make room for Thorn Vault Forager, which functions as a decently costed mana dork that becomes better when we sack food to again synergize with our food production, as well as being a repeatable tribal tutor that lets us fetch up our more powerful token creating or value generating squirrels whenever we may need them. And then to close out this category, we'll be adding in a pair of squirrel token generators that are not themselves squirrels by first sidelining Enray's Forerunners, which is a respectable finisher for go-wide decks, but will be replaced with the more on-theme Nut Collector, which we can drop at any time to passively create more squirrel tokens while still functioning as a way to pump our squirrels in the late game for added damage, and then raising the cycling land Baron more so we can give it spot to black market connections, which is fantastic here as both a repeatable source of ramp via treasures, which Hazel can generate mana off of without having to crack them, draw to ensure we have spells to spend all our mana on, and what are functionally 3/2 squirrel tokens that our commander can multiply rather than the typical 1/1s, with its life cost being easily offset via the various repeatable AoE life drain sources and food token generators our build has access to. Now, with the squirrel portion of our game plan properly supported, it's time for us to move on to less tribal-oriented sources of tokens, bolstering the number of them in the base build so that Hazel will always have tokens on hand to multiply and to generate mana off of. Starting off with a trio of token generators that we'll more or less be running just to get more tokens on board, we'll be swapping out Moonstone Eulogist, which like Ogre Slumlord is a bit too inconsistent with its token generation due to it being tied to creatures dying, to swap in Tendershoot Dryad, which provides us with 4 token bodies per rotation to enable Hazel, and eventually turns the 1/1s it creates into 3/3s as we grow our board to make them even deadlier, shelving Decree of Pain, which is a just too basic and mana-intensive wipe to keep its spot, in favor of Pest Infestation, which when combined with Hazel's mana generation may as well be a one-sided back row board wipe, and one that comes with the added benefit of flooding our board with pest tokens for additional board presence and life gain. And lastly, terraforming the Gain land Jungle Hollow into the legendary land the Shire, which provides us with easy access to food token creation from the relative safety of our land base to help keep our token count and life totals nice and high. Then moving on to some token generators, which also double up as sack effects to help proc the aristocrats pieces we have. We'll be trading out the mass removal pieces, Windgrace's Judgment and Casualties of War, both of which are solid but are just a bit too high cost and generic to be worth running here, so we can put in Promise of Aclazotz and Killer Service, the former initially letting us turn one of our 1/1 tokens into a 4/3 flyer, and then sticks around to keep turning our smaller tokens into free populates to supplement our commander's token copying, and the latter initially giving us 3 food out of the gate to help enable Hazel's mana generation, and then passively letting us turn any of our tokens into 4/4s to build up our board with, as well as letting go of the legend Arasta of the Endless Web, which could have stayed in since our opponent's casting instants and sorceries is common enough to proc her token creation, but in the end lost her spot to Peregrine Took, who tacks on free food token creation to every single other token generation effect we have to enable Hazel even more reliably, while also giving us the option to turn our spare food tokens into draw if we need card advantage over ramp or life gain. From there, we'll be pivoting yet again to some new entries that will help supplement the base build's ability to turn our enormous amount of small creature tokens into legitimate threats, which will see us replace the 2 graveyard-focused food token generator Insatiable Frugivore with the Planeswalker Nissa Ascended Animist, whose Overrun style ultimate can be used to end the game as soon as she comes down, while her ability to create enormous tokens and pop back row can alternatively help us build up our board and keep control of it if we're not ready to end the game just yet. The 2 slow removal piece Maelstrom Pulse losing its spot to the token creating Lord Creekwood Liege, whose passive 1/1 token creation grows our board even further, which then turn into 3/3s thanks to its Anthem, while the rest of our board at least receives a +1/+1 stat bump for some added damage. And finally, we'll be cutting Honored Dray Leader, which admittedly can benefit from the squirrel and food portion of our game plan, but only to pump itself rather than the rest of our board, so we'll be exchanging it out for Sandstorm Salvager, which enables Hazel better in the early game thanks to coming down with a 3/3 token body, and then can later be used to permanently and repeatedly pump all our tokens with +1/+1 counters, as well as grant them all trample for a turn, which ends up synergizing much better with our varied token selection rather than just food and squirrels. So, having covered all the new additions we'll be making to the build that can create vanilla tokens through one way or another, let's switch gears for a moment to some entries we'll be adding in that can still create tokens, but this time tokens of our non-token creatures, of which the base build only has 1 entry, but we'll be building upon significantly so that Hazel can double up on an even wider array of targets. For example, we'll be swapping out Woe Strider, whose ability to sack our creature tokens for free can be useful to proc our on-death payoffs, but would be much better suited in a full-blown Aristocrats build rather than here where we actually want to keep the majority of our board, so we'll be swapping it with Mimic Vat, which lets us create temporary token copies of both our and our opponent's creatures as they die, which Hazel can then create a permanent token copy of with her passive before the original is exiled so it can stick around for longer. Smelting down Sword of the Squeak, which can be a solid finisher in a deck more dedicated to 1/1 tokens specifically, but is less useful here since we're creating more than just 1/1s, so we'll be reforging it into Nexus of Becoming, which provides passive draw as a bonus, but we're really running thanks to it letting us turn our creatures and artifacts in hand into 3/3 token copies of themselves at no mana cost each turn, easily enabling Hazel's token copying while often giving its target a stat bump as well, and removing the build's other cycling land, Tranquil Thicket, to make room for Bramble Sovereign, which lets us instead create token copies of our creatures for 2 mana pop as they come down, which shouldn't be an issue considering how much mana Hazel can generate for us. And then to wrap up our token copy creators, we'll be benching the AoE Edict Plague Crafter, which is just an okay source of disruption here, so we can instead run Helm of the Host, whose recent reprint now puts it in budget. We can cast and equip all in one turn using Hazel's massive mana generation, and, once it's down, lets us double up on our commander and other token-centric legendaries to build some truly disgusting boards. Then finally reaching the end of our upgrades, we'll be adding 2 more token-centric payoffs to the build to wrap up. The first seeing us replaced a bit too awkward to enable in this build Nest Shambler with the token copier for the common good, which slots in nicely alongside the build's other ways to multiply our tokens and lets us protect our board from board wipes for a single mana if we need to, and the second seeing us replace the somewhat strange sacrifice removal piece Skyfisher Spider with the more token-themed payoff Mirkwood Bats, which gives us another way to turn our tokens into damage as they come down or we sack them away to help cut away at our opponent's life totals just a bit more. So, now that we've covered all 20 cards that we've upgraded from the core build, let's take a look at the breakdown for this Precon upgrade. Looking at the stats that matter to our game plan, we have 35 sources of tokens to help enable Hazel's ramp and token copying, 11 cards that care about tokens to generate value off of and empower those tokens alongside Hazel, 5 ways to create token copies of our creatures, and 5 ways to copy our tokens to let us amass even larger amounts of token bodies, 8 cards that care about our creatures and or tokens leaving the battlefield, and 9 ways to sack our creatures and or tokens to both generate additional value as we naturally lose our tokens, and give us the option to sack our excess tokens for value, 20 cards that are either squirrels themselves or that can create squirrel tokens, as well as 13 cards that care about squirrels specifically, giving us a decent squirrel sub-theme to enable the squirrel aspect of Hazel's kit, and lastly, 8 ways to either pump our squirrels, our tokens, or our entire board to ensure we'll be able to close out games reliably once we reach critical mass. For general deck stats, we have 13 ramp sources, 16 card draw sources, 10 targeted removal sources, and 1 board wipe. Our draw being slightly above average in this build so that we can keep up with the massive amount of mana generation Hazel produces and not run out of spells to cast. Looking at our mana curve, we have an average CMC of 3.19, leaving us with a lower weight curve that wants us to get our token production online early, and, once it's been established, drop Hazel to begin copying our best tokens and turn all our tokens into massive amounts of mana. Then from there, it's just a matter of us using our insane mana generation to get even more token creating sources on board, turning our non-token creatures into tokens so they can be copied further by Hazel and our other token copying effects, and slowly eating away at our opponent's life totals as we sacrifice or crack our excess tokens for value, building up our board more and more until we finally reach critical mass, and then, alongside our AoE pump effects, Hazel and her horde of tokens will be able to crash into our opponents one final time to ensure our victory. The final price of this build then comes out to be $120.12 after upgrades. This price does not include tax or shipping and assumes that the price you paid for the Precon is its currently overinflated price of $85, though you may have been able to get it cheaper if you pre-ordered it early or if you bought it as part of a bundle. The price of the cards was calculated using the cheapest listed marketplace price on TCG Player at the time of this recording. Now, if we want to add even more upgrades by going over budget, since this is a token deck, the obvious choices here would be replacing Mimic VAT and Killer Service with the token doublers, Parallel Lives, and Doubling Season, which will stretch our bank accounts to the absolute limit but do provide insane amounts of value to the build by making all our token generation twice as effective. Or, if we just love squirrels and want to be even more irresponsible with our spending, we can replace Tendershoot Dryad with Deranged Hermit to give the squirrel portion of our deck a boost with even more tribal token creation and another lord, though roughly at the cost of the previously 2 mentioned upgrades combined, quite possibly making us deranged too if we decide to run it. Thanks everyone for sticking around until the end of the video. So, with the Squirreled Away Precon upgrade complete, it's time for us to return back to our non-Precon builds, which will be kicking off with last week's poll winner, the card drawing and creature cheating Mr. Foxglove. So look forward to that build coming soon. Then moving on to this week's poll, we have a trio of contenders that were requested by you in the comments of the previous poll and Precon upgrade videos. Those being the counter-distributing Rabbit Folk, Phineas Ace Archer, the spell-copying Otterfolk, Alania Divergent Storm, and the land-flooding Calamity Beast, Eluge the Shoreless Sea. So be sure to cast your votes, link in the description, before the deadline on August 31st, and let me know in the comments which commander you voted for, and what other commanders from this set you'd like to see me feature in future polls. And again, before we close out, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy this content to help keep this channel growing. Consider donating to my Buy Me a Coffee or using my Game Nerds affiliate link in the description if you want to support the channel directly. And if you want to see more videos like this one, either click on the videos floating around my head for the latest builds, or click on the card above for a playlist of all the videos I've made so far. And with that, have a good one, folks, and stay safe.